if I remember correctly, we left off the other day, chapter 3. I want to pick up first page. Vernon says he's changed his mind. They're not going to leave. And Harry tries to encourage him. You do want to go, etc. Let's see here. Vernon thinks it's all about to get his house. And let's pick up on page. Around, I don't know where it's going to be. 32, 33, something like that. Harry explains they think the ministry's been infiltrated. This is in response to Vernon's comment about, don't you have a ministry, magic that protects things and all this kind of stuff? Okay. So they continue going back and forth. And Harry says, these accidents aren't accidents. Okay. How did book 1 begin? Book 6 begin? In the chapter The Other Minister. Rockdale Bridge, hurricane in the West Country, murder of Susan Bones and Emmeline Vance. These accidents aren't accidents. The crashes, explosions, derailments, whatever else has happened since we last watched the news. Okay, notice that. Since we last watched the news, that kind of, I'm not saying it states this, it kind of implies since last night or since a couple of days ago. There have been more accidents, more explosions, more derailments, etc. People are disappearing and dying, and he's behind it. Voldemort. I've told you this over and over again. He kills muggles for fun. Even the fogs. They're caused by Dementors. Dudley. There's more of them. See, Dudley thinks when Harry fought off the 2 Dementors at the end of the previous book, he kind of thinks Harry destroyed them. No. Patronus just chases them away. It doesn't kill them. Harry, yeah, lots of them. All right? So, Vernon, okay, made your point. And then he kind of pauses again. Harry, don't you understand? They will torture, and kill you like they did my parents. Dudley, Dad, I'm going with these order people. Dudley, for the first time in your life, you're talking sense. Why does Harry use the appeal to his parents? Or, let me rephrase that. Why does Harry use the appeal to what happened to his parents? Is Harry starting to show us by trying to protect the Dursleys that there's maybe a little more connection to them by bringing in his parents? They're not his parents. I'm not suggesting that at all. There is no great love between Harry and the Dursleys. But they are what? They are family. Okay? So, the order arrive, and Hestia Jones, a couple pages later, says, Daedalus, let's wait outside. Let's give Harry some private time with his family. Harry's like, no need to. This is about as private as it gets, So, Petunia grabs her purse, and Vernon says, well, this is goodbye then, boy. Doesn't even call him by name. He swings his hand out to shake Harry's hand and then stops. All right? They head towards the door. Dudley's planted like a tree. I don't understand. We'll just spend a lot of time on this. What don't you understand? This is around 39 and 40. Why isn't he coming with us? See, Harry's made it clear what's going to happen. Voldemort and all his minions are going to descend on this house the moment, seemingly, Harry turns 17. Dudley's thinking, why isn't Harry leaving too? For his protection. Vernon, what? What did you do? Why isn't he coming too? Well, he doesn't want to. You don't want to, right? Harry, no. Well, there you are. Come on, we're off. Dudley stands still. Where is he going to go? Off with their lot. Okay? Excuse me, before he says that. Oh, yes, he does say that. And Hestia, off with some of our lot? Harry, it's fine, don't worry about it. He's had, how old is he? He's 17, nearly. Nearly 17. He's had 16 years of this to put up with. Easy cinch. Doesn't matter anymore. Doesn't matter? Don't these people realize what you've been through, what danger you were in, the unique position? No, they don't. They think I'm a waste of space, actually, but I'm used to, I don't think you're a waste of space. He doesn't get to finish his sentence because Dudley interrupts. If Harry had not seen Dudley's lips move, he might not have believed it. Notice the narrator is telling us Harry's perspective. We don't get Harry's perspective all the time throughout this book. Sometimes the narrator's looking in like this omniscient person from outside and describing everything. This is one of the instances where the narrator takes us inside Harry's mind. If Harry had not seen Dudley's lips move, he might not have believed it. In other words, because he did see Dudley's lips move, Dudley had to have said that. As it was, he stared at Dudley for several seconds before accepting it must have been his cousin who had spoken. For one thing, Dudley turned red. Harry was embarrassed and astonished himself. Thanks, Dudley. Dudley appeared to grapple with thoughts too unwieldy for expression before mumbling, "You saved my life." Not really. It was your soul the Dementor would have taken. He looked curiously at his cousin. They had had virtually no contact during this summer or last, as Harry had come back to Privet Drive so briefly and kept to his room so much. It now dawned on Harry, however, that the cup of cold tea on which he had trodden that morning might not have been a booby trap at all. Notice the narrator doesn't flesh out that idea. If it wasn't a booby trap, notice the narrator doesn't state what it might have been. So if it wasn't a booby trap, what was it? Peace offering. Dudley's expression of concern, compassion. Although rather touched, that is, Harry, rather. What does that word rather, adverb rather there mean? Very. Harry's really moved by what Dudley has said. He was nevertheless quite relieved that Dudley appeared to have exhausted his ability to express his feelings. After opening his mouth once or twice more, Dudley stops. Petunia, however, burst into tears. Such a lovely boy saying thank you. Hestia, he hasn't said thank you. He said Harry wasn't a waste of space. Like, in what universe can "you're not a waste of space" mean thank you? Now look what happens. Throughout this book, in fact, throughout some of the others, we see individuals hear things and they process them, and then they restate what they've heard. They restate them according to their interpretation of what's been said. We saw that with Harry, book 2. Harry, on the night in which you received that scar, Voldemort transferred some of his powers to you. You mean Voldemort put a bit of himself into me? Dumbledore. Yes, Harry. It's a pretty good way of putting it. And Harry does that all throughout. We're going to see other characters do it. And one of the things to bear in mind, or one of the things to keep note of, is how accurate are their translations or their interpretations. Okay? Here, look at what Harry says. Yeah, but coming from Dudley, that's like, I love you. That is why Harry turned red. That is why Harry was rather moved. He just heard, not literally, he didn't hear these words, but Harry heard and saw the words come out of Dudley's mouth, and he interpreted them as Dudley saying, for the first time in his life, I love you, Harry. And Harry, torn between annoyance and a desire to laugh, as Aunt Petunia continued to clutch at Dudley as if he had just saved Harry from a burning building. Vernon, are we going? Why is Vernon so ready to get out? Okay, Voldemort's coming, all that. Why else? Little too much being shown here. Little too much, affection. If you don't know anything about the Brits, what you do need to know is they don't show affection. I mean, father's sons, father's daughter, son, good day. Go off, fight the war. No hugging, nothing. Okay? So, they all make their way towards the door, and then Dudley stops. He turns around, and Dudley pulls away from Petunia, walks toward Harry, who had to repress an urge to threaten him with magic. Then Dudley held out his large pink hand. Who did we just see do the same thing? Vernon. But Vernon did this, and then he balled his hand up and brought it back. He didn't go through with the act of shaking Harry's hand. Why? Why do we do handshakes? I'm pre-COVID, Now it's a stupid fist bump or elbow bump. The handshake, it's a medieval image. Okay? It meant, you are giving your word. You are giving your oath of loyalty to that other person. Okay? Vernon can't quite go that far. Blimey, Dudley. Did the Dementors blow a different personality into you? Don't know. Think about that. Pre-Dementors, post-Dementors. Dudley, bully. Post-Dementors, Dudley, I love you. Harry. What are we being shown? Visually. No words attached. I mean, literally, not even this. Meaning? So, I'm going to ask you to retract the first statement. It's not that he's really come full circle. Your second comment, he's totally changed as a person. Where did we see that idea of changing as a person in the first chapter? They talk about pious thickness. And what is pious thickness? Now that he's been imperious going to do to the rest of the ministry? Voldemort uses this term. We talked about it. He's going to convert them. And we talked about how this is only used in religious language. Conversion, converted. You don't talk about converting from one party to another. You don't talk about converting from one brand of clothing to another. You switch parties. You switch brand of clothing. You switch kinds of cars, phones, whatever you like. You don't convert. Convert implies the whole person, right? Dudley's a new person, right? Harry's comment. Did the Dementors, how did he put it? Blow a different personality into you. Personality is what? It's the outward manifestation of you, the individual you. In other words, your soul. Did the Dementors give you a new soul? Have you gone from the old Dudley to the new Dudley? You use biblical language, the old Adam to the new Adam. Has Dudley been metaphorically, not literally, okay? Don't misunderstand me. Metaphorically baptized. Died, the old Dudley's dead, and a new Dudley has risen like a phoenix. I don't know. But Harry seems to imply that, because the old Dudley never would have said this. Now look at Harry's response. Dudley says, "Dunno. See you, Harry. See you, not goodbye, because goodbye implies finality. Goodbye is a shortened form of God be with you. Why? Because I'm never going to see you again. May his face shine upon you, all that kind of stuff. See you implies this isn't forever." "Yeah," said Harry, taking Dudley's hand and shaking it. "Maybe. Take care, Big D." Why does he call him Big D? Keep going. They're friends now. Rest of your statement. That's what his friends call him. Okay? What are Dudley's friends? Harry calls them his gang. See, Dudley has his gang, just like Voldemort has his gang. Voldemort's gang are Death Eaters. Dudley's friends, we don't know what they call themselves, but what do they do? Or what did they used to do at least? They beat up little kids. How far different is that than the Death Eaters? Okay? It's just one's in the Muggle world, one's in the magical world. Over here, they kill. Over here, if you give them enough time, will they kill? Not anymore, I don't think. When Harry calls Dudley Big D, he's saying, Harry, are you saying, Dudley, I'm part of your gang. He's showing respect to Dudley. Dudley nearly smiled. Like, oh, way to go, Harry. Good response. Then lumbered from the room. Why, just theoretically, why is this not shown in the theatrical film release? Why not include this scene? I think it's key. I think it's key to this book. I think it's key to the overall arc of the stories. I think J.K. Rowling needs it to be key to the overall arc of the stories. Because this scene is removed from the film, and a corresponding scene, so this is chapter 3. I never did this before. King's Cross, Flaw in the Plan. Skipping the epilogue, Flaw in the Plan 1. King's Cross 2. Prince's Tale 3. Okay. Where's it going? There is a corresponding scene at the end of the book that is also not in the theatrical film release. Okay? Corresponding means something very similar. And it's not there. By removing this in that scene, you completely change the arc of the story. The story becomes what Dumbledore says Harry would want to do in that chapter in Half-Blood Prince. You would want revenge. And it makes the whole story a revenge story. Okay? These make it something else. We'll talk about when we get to the other scene. So, the Order shows up. They do the Polyjuice Potion out of Harry. Harry's like, no way. Because if there are 7 Potters, what does that mean for the people who take the Polyjuice Potion? What are they painting on their backs? Big red bullseye. Here I am. Hit me. And Harry's like, I don't want anybody else to be attacked for me. I don't want anybody to die for me. Okay? Why? Because he's Patronus Potter. He's the one who's supposed to save everybody else. So, what color does this Polyjuice Potion turn? Gold. A clear, bright gold. Why? Is it because he's a Gryffindor and Gryffindor's colors are red and gold? Yeah, maybe.
Isn't there a saying, a heart of gold?
Yeah. And what did Dumbledore tell Harry in that chapter about love and the prophecy in the previous book? Notwithstanding everything Harry has gone through, he says, your soul is still pure and undefiled. I don't think he means sinless, because he knows Harry's not sinless, right? I mean, Harry has tried to hex people in the back. Harry has stolen things, food, from the kitchens and such. Okay? He's attempted a Crucio. Well, no, he had at that point. He's going to. Well, he did in Half-Blood Prince. His purity is what it symbolizes. Okay? So they leave. And we're told, how many pages in is this? Somewhere around 51, 52, maybe 53. So those other 6 Potters go off with somebody else. Harry goes with Hagrid. Hagrid, you're with me, Harry. Is that all right? We'll be on the bike. Brooms and Thestrals can't take me weight, see? Not a lot of room on the seat with me. You'll be in the sidecar. Harry leaves, just like he came. Or let me put it this way. He arrives like this, and when he leaves and arrives at where he's going, he leaves and arrives the exactly same way. Okay? Because it's at Diagon Alley that Hagrid gets in Hedwig. First one dead. His face is, Hedwig's just the first body to lie on the stage. This is a good Shakespearean tragedy. If things didn't happen off the stage, there would be bodies piled, waist high by the time we get to the end of the play, so to speak. When we get to the end of the Battle of Hogwarts. And these are going to be faces and names we recognize. I'll never forget, don't have time for this, but it'll take 30 seconds. When the seventh book came out, went to a seventh book. It's the only time I'd ever gone to one. Seventh book release party at the biggest bookstore in London, because I was teaching my Harry Potter course then. Waterstones on Piccadilly. Big old massive line. So there was this podcast party done by these podcasters. It was the biggest thing, Harry Potter thing related in the world at the time. One of my students got my family tickets. Sign up for them online, that kind of thing. And so we went there that night, and the way the podcast party worked was you could go there, you could be around, and then at 9 o'clock everybody had to leave. Literally, they had to clear Waterstones because the book release started at midnight. So they had to clear everybody, and by the time all of us who were there, because this thing was all broadcast live via podcast and YouTube at the time. By the time everybody left, we went outside the building. There was a line, I am not kidding, a mile long of people to get in. And they were all dressed, well, most of them, in their favorite Harry Potter costumes. And I'll never forget, we walk out and there's this couple dressed as Tonks and Lupin. And the next day, I couldn't help but think, oh, you poor suckers, because of what's going to happen. So, they leave, they get attacked. Harry stands Shunpike, he uses Expelliarmus. Voldemort comes after Harry. His scar bursts, we're told. As the pain from Harry's scar forced his eyes shut, his wand acted of its own accord. Now listen to the language. He felt it drag his hand round like some great magnet. Saw a spurt of golden fire through his half-closed eyes, heard Voldemort scream, no, and then cries out for a wand from somebody else. Okay. Chapter 5. We turn the page for the very first time reading these stories. And imagine, some of you probably don't need to imagine, but imagine you're 10, 11, 12, you're reading them for the first time, fallen warrior, and the very next word, Hagrid. She is a cruel, sadistic person. She, J.K. Rowling. Because what has she just done? She's implied Hagrid, who has always been there for Harry, right? He's been there through books 1 through 6. He's dead. But he's not dead. Okay, so we see Hagrid get up, and Harry starts meeting the others. Okay. Tonks asks Harry, where's Hedwig? She got hit. Fallen warrior? Possibly. Hedwig's also been there through thick and thin for Harry. Okay. A couple more pages on. We hear Molly say, thank goodness you're all right. Okay. Harry helps Lupin carry George into the kitchen or into the house because George is wounded. And Lupin wants to make sure it really is Harry. So he asks him, a question, and Harry answers it. And Harry says, around page 69, might be 70, none of the Order would have told Voldemort we were moving tonight. Voldemort only caught up with me towards the end. He didn't know which one I was in the beginning. If he'd been on the plan, he'd have known from the start I was with Hagrid. Lupin, how'd you escape? Harry explained. They recognize you? How? What did you do, Harry? I saw Stan Shunpike. He was imperious. I used Expelliarmus. Lupin, Harry, time for disarming is past. These people are trying to capture and kill you. At least stun if you aren't prepared to kill. Harry's thinking, both now and during the heat of the battle, logically. We were hundreds of feet up. Stands not himself. And if I stunned him and he'd fallen, he'd have died the same as if I'd used Avada Kedavra. Expelliarmus saved me from Voldemort 2 years ago. Yes, Harry, and a great number of Death Eaters saw that. Forgive me, but it was a very unusual move. What did Dumbledore say Harry has? Uncommon skill. Uncommon, unusual. What's the skill? Is he particularly adept at Expelliarmus? Notice, it's the thing he uses the most. So you think I should have killed Stan instead? Okay, so if you don't think I should have used Expelliarmus, you think I should have killed him. No, of course not. But, I mean, most people would have expected you to attack back. I mean, Expelliarmus, it's useful, but it's your signature spell. Signature. What does it mean when you talk about something being somebody's signature move? It means you can always count on that person to do that thing. Okay? So why is Expelliarmus Harry's signature move?
I'm trying to kill anybody.
He's not trying to kill. And if you take my earlier reading of what Expelliarmus is, Harry's trying to disarm the other individual, the person who's attacking, for what purpose? To keep that person from getting harmed. If you disarm that individual, then you don't have to attack. You know, the old phrase, the best offense, it's a good defense. It's a defensive move. Why? Because it removes the offensive threat. And if it removes the offensive threat, it stops that individual from harming him or herself. Let me give you a kind of a real-world example. C.S. Lewis, in a little essay on Why I Am Not a Pacifist, that's the title, Why I Am Not a Pacifist, written during the Second World War, said, kind of talking about his experiences in World War I, that one of the reasons why he wasn't a pacifist is because if you take the other person, soldier, as harming himself by killing people, then by stopping, even by killing, that individual, you're stopping that individual from doing what? Killing more. That is, you're stopping that individual from adding more and more and more and more bodies. Let's use an image from one of the Marvel movies, Captain America, from his what? Avengers. From his ledger. The ledger being all the dead I've killed. So if the person's going to go on killing and rack up, let's say, 500 bodies, and you stop that person at 100, you've stopped that person from killing 400 more people. Additional, kind of things. All right? Harry, I won't blast people out of my way just because they're there. That's Voldemort's job. Who else's job was it? Kind of. Who else's practice was it? James. When he was 16 years old, what did he used to do? Oh, look, there's Snivellus. Sirius, yeah. Snape, yep. Okay. So, we find out about George's injury. Mrs. Weasley says, I can't fix it. It's been done by dark magic. But it could have been so much worse. He's alive. Yeah, said Harry, thank God. Which is kind of interesting because Harry, throughout all 6 novels, 7th up to this point, Harry never references God. Harry never says anything about God / the supernatural. The only other one who does, I believe, is Mrs. Weasley in the previous book, one time. We're going to hear that phrase, thank God, several times in this novel. Okay? Which I just think is kind of interesting. So, what is George's injury? Ear's been blasted off. Fred goes up to him. Mrs. Weasley whispers, how do you feel, Georgie? George feels for his ear, it's gone, and he says, saint-like. What's wrong with him? Croaks Fred. Is his mind affected? George, saint-like. You see, I'm holy. Holy, Fred, get it? Notice the second time the word is spelled Hoely, but it's written in italics. The first time George says it, it's spelled this way. Orally, it's the same. Usually when somebody in writing wants to convey that somebody is spelling something out, they do it like this. George doesn't do that. Holy. Holy. Get it, Fred? What's he mean? Okay, so he's missing an ear. But he says this. What's his name? George. Saint George. Holy. Saint-like, he says. Saint George is the patron saint of England. Okay? Why is Saint George significant? Saint George, according to early Christian tradition, another perspective, myth, legend, is famous for defeating a dragon. All the icons of St. George usually have him on horseback with a big long lance, and the lance is piercing the dragon's throat. What is Voldemort's symbol? It's not a dragon, but it's what? It's the head of a snake coming out of a skull. A snake, also called Middle Ages, a worm, just like dragons were called. In the Old English epic poem Beowulf, the dragon is usually referred to as the worm. Okay? Because dragons don't have to have legs and they don't have to have wings. You can have legless and wingless dragons. Okay? So George makes a pun on that. George isn't like St. George because this St. George was martyred. Molly said, thank God, it could have been so much worse. At least he's alive. Why? Because that's foreshadowing. Okay? George isn't going to be a martyr. Martyrs die for the cause. He's going to be one of those who's injured, and there will be others injured, and there will be others that die. Okay? So, Bill comes in, and Mrs. Weasley, Bill, thank God, you know. And Bill tells them, Bill tells him, Mad Eye's dead. That's probably the fallen warrior. Okay? Harry felt as though something inside him was falling through the earth, leaving him forever. So, around 79, maybe 78, 80, something like that. They describe what happens again, and they're trying to figure out how Voldemort could have known. And Bill kind of suggests maybe Mundungus. Tonks. You know who acted exactly as Mad Eye expected him to. He chased Mad Eye first, and when Mundungus gave them away, he switched to Kingsley. So Tonks is telling us who are the most accomplished Aurors, Mad Eye Kingsley Shacklebolt. Where's Tom's? Is she next? Okay. And Fleur says, somebody spilled the beans. Harry, no. Somebody made a mistake, let something slip. I know they didn't mean to do it. We've got to trust each other. I trust all of you. I don't think anyone in this room would have given me up to Voldemort. Lupin has this strange look on his face. Harry, you think I'm a fool? No, I think you like James, who would have regarded it as the height of dishonor to mistrust his friends. Notice, Harry knew what Lupin was getting at. Maybe James should have mistrusted his friends, or at least one of them. Okay, so Bill and Lupin talk about burying Mad Eye's body. Why? Why does he need to be buried? So the Death Eaters don't take his body and turn him into an inferi. Okay? Why else? Pay respect. The body is sacred. There's even, I think it's in the Geneva Conventions of War, which is a modern construct, 1920s. There's even a law that says, when in battle, when you kill an enemy soldier, you don't do anything else. Which is why in Mogadishu, Ethiopia, in 1993, when the Black Hawk helicopter was shot down and a bunch of special forces guys were captured and stuff, and General, whose name is escaping right now, his troops tied a couple of soldiers' bodies to the back of a jeep and dragged them around through the streets of Mogadishu. Internationally, the world was like, you just don't do that. Muhammad Ali, that was his name. And that's why the U.S., actually didn't do anything, just pulled out and said, we won't do that again. Same thing happened in the Iraq War. We had 4 contractors captured, beaten, killed, bodies hung from, a bridge, some of them dragged through the streets. You don't do that. That's why in Lord of the Rings, why Éomer speaks up when they're being questioned by Saruman. And he says, remember Theodred at the fords. Remember Hama at Helm's Deep. What happened to Hama? The orcs hacked him into pieces. Okay? The body's sacred. You got to replace it. You got to bury it. In fact, later on, they don't get all of Mad Eye's body. There's a body part missing. Later on, this isn't really giving anything away. Harry, Ron, and Hermione get that body part, and they go back off to the Forest of Dean, and Harry digs a hole, and he takes that body part, and he buries it at the base of a tree. Anybody know what he does then? Harry, using his wand, burns a cross on the tree. To me, that is the most enigmatic thing in all 7 books. Why? Why put a cross on a tree? Why do you see at gravestones, for example, at any national cemetery, Arlington, why do you see gravestones, some with a cross, some with the Star of David, some with the red crescent? What do each of those symbols imply? Here lies a Christian. Here lies a Jew. Here lies a Muslim. You put the sign of the person's religious faith on the stone. Is this Harry telling us Moody was a secret Christian? I have no flipping idea, which is why it's so odd. Is it telling us Harry is some kind of secret Christian? I don't think that can be the case, because Harry seems to have no awareness at all of any faith tradition or any understanding about what happens after death. Again, very, very odd. It just doesn't seem to fit. Though, What is Sirius's relationship to Harry? Godfather. Godfather does imply a faith tradition, even if that faith tradition now is totally meaningless. You know, a lot of people celebrate Christmas who aren't Christian at all. It's just become what? The winter gift giving time. Okay? Same kind of thing, possibly. Though in English tradition, you know, to be godfather, what must happen? You become godfather at an event, at baptism. So that means Harry was baptized, or another term that's used, christened, messiahed, anointed. So, Harry says, I gotta leave. I gotta get out of here. You guys are in danger while I'm here. Hagrid's like, Harry, what the hell do you think we just did all that for? You know? Didn't they understand, next page, after the part about Mad Eye's body, didn't they understand it was for precisely that reason he wanted to go now, before they had to suffer any more on his behalf? Well, hate to burst your bubble, but all of this is about other people suffering on Harry's behalf. See, Harry's used to being what? The savior. Now other people are saving Harry. He doesn't like that. Okay? So, Hagrid says, man, wait till everybody finds out you did it again, Harry. You defeat... It wasn't me, Harry says. My wand acted of its own accord. Okay, we're going to go back in just a moment to there. So I'm going to put that there. Hermione says, Harry, that's impossible. You mean you did magic without meaning to. You reacted instinctively. No. Notice what Hermione has just done, by the way. She heard Harry, and she interprets it as to what she thinks it means. What's the difference between her doing that and what Harry said about Dudley, or what Harry said about Dumbledore's statement? This was Harry's experience that she's trying to re-enter, and he's like, shut up. It happened to me. He says, no, bike was falling. I couldn't have told you where Voldemort was, but my wand spun in my hand. Previously, last page of the chapter of the Seven Potters, Harry says, or the description is, his wand acted of its own accord. He felt it drag his hand like some great magnet. Here, the wand spun in my hand. See? Little adverbs like that are very, very important, because that means the wand does this. If she had left the word in out, be no problem. The wand spun my hand. But she says, Rowling, in my hand. We could go from there to the very beginning of the chapter 18. She, Hermione, had not felt the wand spin like the needle of a compass. That's like this. Okay, so the narrator first says it spun his hand, and then twice says the wand spun like the needle of a compass. Why? There's no good explanation. It's poor writing. She didn't catch that little error, that inconsistency. That's why I really hope because I'll be one of the first stupid people to buy them. She needs to come out with the revised second edition to correct all these little problems, like Tolkien did with The Lord of the Rings. The second edition, the one you read in this class, is the revised 1965 edition. It's not the 1954-55. Okay? So, Harry goes on and thinks. Well, Mr. Weasley tries to, explain something, and Harry says it wasn't like that. A couple paragraphs on. He leaves, his scar hurts, he walks outside, and we're told. Harry thinks Dumbledore would have believed him. He knew it. Dumbledore would have known how and why Harry's wand did what it did. Why? Because Dumbledore always had the answers. But now, Dumbledore is gone. But Dumbledore, like Mad Eye, like Sirius, like his parents, like his poor owl, all were gone where Harry could never talk to them again. Just get ready for the roller coaster ride, Harry, because there's got to be more. So, his scar hurts because Voldemort's really angry. Chapter 6, we're going to go we don't have time. We're going to skip most of it. The only part I want to discuss is pages 102 and following, which I don't think we can do in 3 minutes, but we find out Hermione stole books from Dumbledore's office. Okay? Books about what? Horcruxes, dark magic. And she explains how unstable you make the rest of your soul by ripping it. And that's just by making one Horcrux. Ron, isn't there any way of putting yourself back together? Hermione, yes, but it would be excruciatingly painful. What's the root of that word? Excruciatingly. Think crucio. Cruciatus cruz. It's cruz, cross. Why do we have this adverb from the word cross? Crucifixion, that's why. Crucifixion was the Roman legions or the Roman Empire's most feared form of death penalty. Because you didn't die from the pain of the nails. You died because you were nailed like this and your feet were nailed. You weren't standing on a platform. So you're nailed with the cross lying flat on the ground. All right? And then they've got to stick the cross up like this. They don't just stick the cross up like this and put up, supports to hold the cross up. They dig a hole so that when the cross comes up and when it reaches a point where the sides of the cross breach the sides of the hole, it does that. And the hole would be at least about 3 feet deep because the cross is about 10, 12 feet high. So when it does that and falls, it falls with the weight of the cross itself. These are like 6 by 6 beams, each beam over 100 pounds, plus the weight of the person on it. And when it falls, your shoulders dislocate. And all you can do is, which is why it could take you days to die. Okay? That's why we call it excruciating. So, yeah, it would be excruciating. Harry, how do you do it? Remorse. What's another word for remorse? Is it just feeling sorry? No, it's more than that. We're going to hear Harry use the word, I think it is, at the end of the book, contrition. To be contrite. Look up Psalm 50. And you have the classic example in the Old Testament, in the Judeo-Christian tradition of contrition. Psalm 50 was written by David when he got caught, having slept with Bathsheba and killed her husband. Okay? And it begins with this cry for mercy. And in that psalm, David says, create in me a clean heart, O God. Renew a right spirit within me. Renew, make again. Why? Because he's fragmented himself. And she says, this would be excruciatingly painful. Why? Other than I love you, what are some of the hardest words to say? And what comes after I'm sorry? Usually, I was wrong. Because what does that mean? That's an act of humility. You were right. I was wrong. Not you, not me, but you. It's also the supreme kind of act of love. Okay, we'll stop there. We are way behind. I've got a couple more things to say about the thing about Horcruxes and contrition, and then we'll have to move along very, very fast.